My name is Shelby Dunn. I'm 37, and for the last 11 years, I poured every second of my life into building Dunn Signature Events into the most sought-after event company in Central California. Then one Friday afternoon, my parents sat the entire family down in the main conference room and announced the creative director position I had spent a decade earning was going to my 31-year-old sister Kaylee, someone who had never worked a single day in the industry. My parents gave the promotion I earned to my sister who knows nothing about the work, and now they're watching the company crumble. If you've ever had your family choose someone else over you after everything you sacrificed, drop your city in the comments. And if this one hurts, hit subscribe. It really means the world. 11 years ago at 26, I walked away from two six-figure offers in San Francisco and moved back to Fresno because my parents were on the verge of losing everything. Dunn Signature Events. The company my grandfather started 50 years earlier was bleeding money fast. Vendors had filed lawsuits, major clients had walked, and the bank was days away from calling in the loan. My father, Ronald Dunn, and my mother, Deborah Dunn, called me in tears, convinced that my marketing degree and the 3 years I had already spent running events for a big agency made me the only person who could save it. I started the very next week as operations manager. The office was chaos. Contracts were scattered everywhere. Invoices months overdue, and half the staff had already left. I spent the first 6 months doing nothing but damage control, renegotiating with every vendor who still answered the phone, rebuilding relationships one lunch at a time, and creating a pricing structure that actually made sense. When Instagram and Pinterest were just starting to matter for weddings, I pushed us hard into visual storytelling, hiring photographers and stylists who could make our portfolio stand out. Within 2 years, we went from barely covering payroll to booking high-end corporate retreats and celebrity weddings across Central California. Revenue climbed 60% in 36 months, and for the first time in a decade, the company was in the black. Dad and Mom noticed the numbers, of course, but praise was never their style. Every success came with a quiet reminder that Grandpa had built the business from nothing, or that I still had a long way to go before I measured up to his legacy. I learned to live with the comparison because the results kept getting better. I brought in new systems for booking venues, locked in exclusive partnerships with the best florists and caterers in the valley, and turned us into the go-to name for anyone who wanted an event that felt effortless and looked flawless on social media. Meanwhile, my younger sister Kaylee Dunn, 31 now but 20 back then, was drifting through community college, switching majors every semester and spending most nights out with her best friend, Jordan Moss. Jordan had a design degree but hadn't managed to hold a steady job since graduation, so the two of them mostly partied and posted pictures online. My parents never pushed Kaylee the way they pushed me. Whatever she wanted, she got, no questions asked. If she wrecked the car, they bought her a new one. If she needed rent money, it appeared. She was the baby of the family, and that came with a different set of rules. I kept working 12-hour days because I believed in what we were building. By year 5, we had doubled staff, moved into a bigger space downtown, and started getting inquiries from Los Angeles and the Bay Area. Clients trusted me to deliver perfection, and I did. Colleagues started joking that when the current creative director finally retired, the job was mine without question. Everyone could see it, even the vendors who had once threatened to sue us now sent holiday cards and referral bonuses. The idea of leading the creative side felt like the natural next step after everything I had already fixed. I began quietly preparing concepts, mood boards, new vendor partnerships that would take us to the next level. The entire team was excited. For once, it looked like all those years of carrying the company on my back were about to pay off in the way they should have years earlier. Word started spreading that the creative director was giving notice at the end of the quarter. People kept stopping by my office to congratulate me in advance. No one doubted it was coming. After all, I had earned it. A few weeks later, when the creative director position officially opened, the energy around the office changed overnight. Everyone knew the current director had turned in her notice, and whispers turned into open conversations about who would replace her. No one bothered pretending it could be anyone except me. After 11 years of fixing every broken system and landing the biggest clients we had ever seen, the next step felt obvious. Vendors called to congratulate me early. Even the catering companies started asking if they should send portfolios directly to my inbox from now on. Dad scheduled what he called a family business update for that Friday afternoon in the main conference room. These meetings usually lasted 15 minutes and covered boring stuff like insurance renewals, so nobody thought much of it. I walked in with my laptop ready to talk strategy for the next quarter. The room was fuller than usual. Mom sat at Dad's right, Kaylee lounged in the corner scrolling her phone, and Jordan was actually there too, sipping an iced coffee like she belonged. Dad cleared his throat and started with the usual numbers, then dropped the announcement without warning. After careful consideration, your mother and I have decided to bring Kaylee on board as the new creative director, effective immediately. The room went dead silent. I remember the air conditioning humming louder than it ever had. Mom smiled like she had just revealed the best surprise party ever, while Kaylee finally looked up from her screen and gave a little wave. I waited for the punchline that never came. Because we're a family-owned LLC, my parents hold 100% of the voting power. There was no board, no HR vote, no posting the job. They could do whatever they wanted, and they just did. I asked the only question that mattered. On what experience Dad didn't miss a beat. Kaylee has a fresh perspective and natural creativity that this company desperately needs right now. You've done an amazing job with Operations, Shelby, but sometimes you're too rigid, too focused on the details. Kaylee has the visionary spark we've been missing. Mom jumped in before I could respond. Exactly. We think she'll bring the kind of energy that gets people talking on social media again. I stood up, told everyone the meeting was over for me, and asked my parents to step into the small office down the hall. The second the door closed, I laid it out. 11 years of turning a dying company into the top name in the valley, millions in revenue I personally brought in, and they were handing the creative reins to someone whose biggest professional achievement was a 6-month unpaid internship in Los Angeles 5 years ago. Dad cut me off halfway through. This isn't about qualifications on paper, it's about family. Kaylee needs this opportunity more than you do right now. Mom added the line that still rings in my head. Shelby, you already have everything. Let your sister have something for once. I told them I wasn't going to fight them in front of the staff, but I needed time to process what had just happened. They looked relieved, like I had agreed to play along. I walked back to my office, closed the door, and sat there staring at the mood boards I had spent months preparing for a role that no longer existed. That was the exact moment I realized the company I had saved might not be worth saving anymore. That night, I barely slept, replaying every second of the meeting until the sun came up. Monday morning, Kaylee showed up in a brand new designer outfit and announced that Jordan would be joining the team immediately as her creative assistant. The salary they offered Jordan was 25% above the industry median for someone with her experience, which was basically none in actual event production. Dad signed the paperwork without blinking because, as he put it, the company had finally turned the corner financially and could afford to invest in fresh talent. Within 48 hours, Kaylee scheduled a full rebrand. She presented a $120,000 contract with an agency run by one of Jordan's old college friends who had never handled anything larger than birthday parties. The proposal promised a complete visual overhaul, new logo, custom website, and a photo shoot at a vineyard 2 hours away that would cost another $30,000 just for the location fee. When I pointed out that our current branding had won regional awards for the past 3 years and still performed perfectly online, Kaylee rolled her eyes and said the company looked dated and needed to feel luxurious again. 2 weeks later, she started blocking off the most expensive venues in California for styled shoots that had no client attached. One property in Napa charged us a non-refundable deposit of $18,000 just to hold dates that served no purpose except pretty pictures. She told the sales team these shoots would attract high-end brides on their own, but when I ran the numbers, the return on investment didn't exist for at least 18 months, if ever. Every time I brought data to the table, she dismissed it as overthinking. Then came the hiring spree. Kaylee posted on her personal Instagram looking for creative interns, and within days brought in 4 of her friends who had never worked a wedding in their lives. They spent their days rearranging mood boards, ordering latte art for the office, and planning launch parties for the rebrand that kept getting pushed back because nothing was actually finished. Payroll jumped 15% overnight, while productivity and actual booked events dropped because no one was following up on leads anymore. I tried warning my parents privately after the 3rd week. I showed them the cash flow forecast and how the branding contract plus the venue deposits had already burned through most of our reserve. Dad waved the spreadsheet away and told me I was bringing negative energy into a creative transition. Mom added that I needed to support my sister instead of competing with her. When I asked what would happen if these decisions tanked the company, they both looked at me like I was the one who didn't understand family loyalty. The final straw that month came when Kaylee decided every corporate proposal needed a full-scale mock setup just to impress potential clients. She booked a warehouse in downtown Fresno, hired set builders, and spent another $40,000 on props that would be used once and thrown away. The client we were chasing ended up signing with a competitor in Sacramento because our quote came in triple what they expected. Kaylee blamed the sales team for not explaining the vision properly. Staff members started coming to me in private asking what was going on and whether they should update their resumes. I didn't have answers anymore. Every attempt to course correct got labeled as resistance to change. Kaylee and Jordan treated the office like their personal playground, while the rest of us watched the profit margins disappear faster than anyone wanted to admit. 3 months flew by and the cracks were impossible to ignore any longer. The first disaster hit in early summer when we were finalizing the wedding of a tech billionaire's daughter flying in from the Bay Area. The budget sat at just under $2 million, the kind of event that would have put us on every luxury vendor list from San Francisco to San Diego. Jordan handled the venue proposal herself. She sent the client renderings for a stunning vineyard in Paso Robles that had been booked solid for 18 months. Instead of double-checking availability, she simply swapped in photos from a different property and promised the date was secure. The bride's planner called 2 days later screaming. We lost the contract, forfeited an $80,000 deposit, and the story spread through Silicon Valley circles faster than we could apologize. Less than 2 weeks after that, a corporate chain we had serviced for 6 years decided not to renew their annual 10-event contract. Kaylee had personally assured their CFO everything was handled, then forgot to submit the updated insurance certificate before the deadline. When the legal department flagged the missing document, the client walked and took their $400,000 commitment to a competitor in Sacramento. Trying to fix it after the fact cost us another $30,000 in rush fees that never made a difference. By the end of that quarter, the financial damage crossed $400,000 between lost deposits penalties and the rebrand that still wasn't finished. Vendors who once fought to work with us started demanding payment upfront. Cash flow slowed to a trickle while the monthly burn rate stayed sky high. The office mood turned toxic overnight. People stopped talking in meetings, stopped answering emails after 5, and started forwarding job listings to each other in private chats. Resignations rolled in faster than we could process them. The head florist left first, then the entire lighting crew, followed by 2 senior coordinators who had been with the company almost as long as I had. Within 6 weeks, we went from 38 employees to 19, and most of the ones who remained were the new interns Kaylee had hired, who barely knew how to fill out an invoice. Through it all, only 2 people refused to jump ship. My lead coordinator, Paige Ingram, and our production manager, Garrett Shaw, kept showing up early, staying late, and quietly moving booked events forward so we didn't lose everything at once. They became the only reason some clients still answered my calls. Old brides who had worked with me for years started reaching out directly asking what on earth was happening at Dunn Signature Events and whether they should be worried about referrals they had sent our way. Dad and Mom finally noticed when the bank statement came in red for the first time in 8 years. They scheduled emergency meetings that Kaylee skipped because she was at a creative retreat in Palm Springs with Jordan. The numbers on the screen were brutal, and for the first time since the announcement, neither parent had an easy excuse. The company I had spent more than a decade protecting was sliding toward the same cliff I had pulled it back from all those years ago, and this time I wasn't sure anyone could stop the fall. By early fall, the numbers were catastrophic, and no amount of creative spin could hide it anymore. The bank sent a formal notice of default on the business loan we had refinanced years earlier, stating that unless 2 missed payments were cured within 30 days, they would begin foreclosure proceedings on every asset tied to the company, including the family home that had been used as collateral back when we were fighting to survive. One Thursday night around 9, long after I had stopped expecting anything to change, my parents showed up at my apartment unannounced. Dad carried a thick folder of bank letters and Mom held a bottle of wine like it was some kind of peace offering. They sat on my couch, looking 20 years older than they had 6 months ago, and asked if we could talk. I let them in, but stayed standing. Dad started with the numbers, how much we were behind, how many vendors had already filed claims, how the payroll account would be empty by the following week. Then Mom looked me in the eye and said the words I never thought I would hear. "We were wrong, Shelby. Please come back. You're the only one who can fix this." Dad nodded and added that Kaylee had agreed to step aside completely if I returned as creative director and took full control of every decision moving forward. I listened to everything without interrupting once. When they finished, I reminded them calmly that I had warned them repeatedly about every expense that was now sinking the ship. I had begged them to pause the rebrand to keep the proven venues to stop hiring people who couldn't execute a timeline. Each time they told me I was too negative and needed to let Kaylee shine. Returning now would mean inheriting lawsuits, angry creditors, and a reputation that might never recover. The risk was no longer just professional, it was legal. One wrong move, and I could be personally liable for decisions I never approved. They cried. Mom kept repeating that family stuck together no matter what, that Grandpa would want me to save his legacy one more time. Dad offered to put everything in writing to give me majority voting shares, anything I wanted. I told them the time for deals had passed, the day they chose someone else over the person who had already proven she could run the company profitably for 11 straight years. The next morning, I typed my resignation letter, kept it professional, and gave the full 2 weeks' notice required by my contract. Paige and Garrett asked for a quiet meeting that same afternoon. They wanted to know what came next for them. I told them the truth. Dunn Signature Events was finished, but I wasn't done building. Within 10 days, we filed paperwork for Valor Celebrations, a brand new LLC, with the 3 of us as equal partners. Word traveled fast. Clients I had worked with for years began reaching out on their own, asking if we were taking bookings under the new name. Brides who had lost confidence in Dunn asked me personally to handle their events instead. Vendors who still trusted my contracts offered better rates just to stay in my circle. By the time my 2 weeks ended, Valor already had 7 signed contracts worth more than what Dunn had managed to close in the previous quarter. I walked out of the building for the last time carrying only the files I had created myself. Paige and Garrett met me in the parking lot with coffee and the keys to our tiny new office space downtown. We had no idea how far we would go, but we knew one thing for certain: this time the company would rise or fall on decisions we made together, not on family favoritism. Exactly 1 year after I walked out those doors, Valor Celebrations had become the name every bride and corporate planner in Central California fought to book. We were sold out 24 months in advance, just appeared on the cover of California Weddings magazine as the new powerhouse of West Coast events, and the Fresno Bee ran a weekend feature calling us the fastest success story the Valley had ever seen. Paige Garrett and I moved into a 6,000 square foot warehouse loft downtown, hired 12 new full-time specialists, and finally had to start a waitlist because we physically couldn't take on any more work. Dunn Signature Events closed its doors quietly 8 months after my resignation. No public bankruptcy, no auction. My parents sold the remaining equipment, paid off the most urgent creditors, and kept the family house by refinancing one last time. They moved together into a small 2-bedroom apartment near Shaw and West, the kind with thin walls and a shared laundry room. Dad took a part-time job selling insurance. Mom started doing alterations out of the living room, and they learned to live on a fraction of what they once spent without complaint. They still woke up next to each other every morning. Some things apparently not even total financial collapse could break. Kaylee's crash was the loudest. $75,000 in credit card debt and personal loans she had taken out for clothes trips, and the leased Mercedes finally swallowed her whole. The car was repossessed in the middle of the night. The designer wardrobe went up on resale apps for pennies. Within 5 months, she was waitressing double shifts at a 24-hour diner off Highway 41, still wearing the same tired smile she used to flash in office selfies. Tips barely covered the minimum payments, and the collection calls started coming in before sunrise. I learned these things in fragments: a former vendor spotting Dad at the grocery store, a mutual friend sending me a photo of Kaylee's new name tag. I never asked for updates and never responded when people tried to fill me in. Then, one quiet Sunday evening, a single message appeared from the number I still had saved as Mom and Dad. Shelby, the apartment is small, but we're making it work. We lost the company, the big house, everything we thought mattered. We were wrong about so many things, especially about you. We're proud of what you've built and sorry for the years we didn't show it. If you ever want to talk, we're here. No pressure. We love you. I stared at the screen for a long time. I thought about the 11 years I carried them, the nights I worked until dawn to keep their legacy alive the moment they chose someone else. I thought about the apartment they now shared, the diner shifts, the quiet mornings with coffee for 2 instead of a staff of 38. I thought about the fact that they were still together, still holding on to each other. And then I blocked the number. Some bridges aren't meant to be rebuilt, no matter how small the new apartment is, or how sincere the apology feels. I protected my peace once. I wasn't going to gamble it again. Valor is now the biggest name in the region, run exactly the way it should have been from the beginning, on talent, respect, and zero tolerance for favoritism. That is the legacy I chose. To everyone who stayed until the very last word, thank you. If you've ever had to draw a hard line with family to protect your future, drop a comment and let me know I'm not alone. And if someone you know is stuck in toxic dynamics right now, share this story. Sometimes hearing it's okay to walk away is the push they need. Thank you for listening. See you in the next one.